How you doing, Albert? Good to see you, sir.
Hey, Rich. I just on a personal note, I'm gonna miss real sports too. That was,
Dude, right?
I mean, I think it was on when I was a kid. I mean, it's like it's the staying power of that show is unbelievable, and
29 years.
it's sad for journalism. You know what I mean? Like that's the type of show that I really feel like is dying that we need. I think it was Florio that said it earlier today. It's 60 minutes for sports. So yeah, it sucks that it's going away. And big shout out to Bryant and the crew for all the work they did over the
No
years.
doubt about it. No doubt about it. So my first question for you is please interpret for me the word committed and the reference Jalen Hurts was making with that word, what it appeared towards his teammates.
Yeah, I think it's always interesting when a player does this sort of thing, and normally you won't see it as a guy punching him between the eyes that way, but Jalen Hurts is, I mean, seen as like a generational type of leader. Just the leadership qualities he has, he's A plus, and so. He's got a good pulse for where that team is, and I don't think culture's ever been the issue there. Like they've got such a great leadership group. It's not just Jalen. I mean, they got the four guys. They're sort of core four: the two defensive linemen and Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox, and the two offensive linemen and Lane Johnson and Jason Kelsey that have been such important pieces for them. So I don't think that's ever going to be like a bad culture, at least while those guys are there. The way I interpret it was more the details, and we need to be on it, and we need to, basically be handling this as if every week is the Super Bowl. And it's interesting because I talked to Nick Sirianni about this a couple of weeks ago, where they feel like every team, because of who they are now, is treating the Eagles as their big game. And there's an adjustment that a young team has to make when that becomes the case. And the Bills have dealt with it for a while. The Chiefs have obviously dealt with it for a while. And the Eagles are there now where they're everyone's big game, and that can take a toll on you. And if you are slipping on details a little bit, those things start to show up. So I don't think that there's like a huge accountability issue in that locker room. It's a really good locker room, but my sense would be that what Jalen's getting at is a little bit more about they have to be on all the details this time of year.
Well, again, the word committed means that somebody could be on the details. They choose not to be, is
Right.
really what the inference is right there. And you're saying that that is not
I mean,
an appropriate
I think
read.
there's certainly that piece of it where it's like there could be individuals that he is calling out there, and those people know who they are. And so, again, like the leadership they've had there is so strong that I don't think it's like a systemic issue, is what I'm saying. Being on the details means everybody. And so if there are three or four or five guys that are important players in the team that aren't, I think that this is Jalen's way of saying, get on it now, because if you don't, the season's going to be over a lot sooner than we hope.
What's your reporting on the coordinator change, or at least the play calling change on the defensive side of the ball to go to Matt Patricia, Albert?
Yeah, so my reporting on that, it goes back, I think, to January, in that their plan, if they were to lose Jonathan Gannon, was to try and make Vic Fangio their next defensive coordinator. He was a consultant there. And because of the timing of Gannon being picked by Arizona as their next coach, it didn't really work out. Fangio had already committed to Miami. Gannon was planning on taking Nick Rawls, who's really well thought of in the organization, but maybe wasn't seen as quite ready to run the defense with him, to Arizona. And so they sort of middled it, where they went and got a guy who was once Vic Fangio's right hand man in Sean Desai. And Sean's incredibly intelligent, but this is a new system. This is a new voice. And, you had, like a few off seasons now of building for Jonathan Gannon's system. And I just got the sense something was lost in translation there. And, really where the problem showed up most for them was on third down. And I know that like people there felt like they needed a little jolt on third down, and they were a little too static on third down. And if there's one thing Matt Patricia can bring to the mix, it's, being complex and difficult to deal with in long yardage situations. That's one thing he was really good at in his years in New England as a defensive coach. So that's what they're trying to do there. What does it mean after the season? It's a great question, because, it'd obviously be almost impossible to go back to Sean Desai now. And, chances are he's somewhere else next year. do you go with Patricia full time after this, or do you jump back in and start a new defensive coordinator search? I think all of that will be on the table now. And again, you look at like how they flipped their defense versus their offense. On offense, they promoted their quarterbacks coach Brian Johnson. Kevin Patullo, was their pass game coordinator last year, has an elevated role, and they've been just fine on that side of the ball for the most part. On defense, there's been more problems, and I think a big part of it was the timing of everything in January, and then maybe shaking up things a little more than they needed to be shaken up. When you went to replace Jonathan Gannon.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. While I was talking to Andrew Whitworth here in studio, Aaron Rodgers made his usual Tuesday appearance on Pat McAfee's show and said it was not realistic for him to be 100% healthy to be medically cleared. Why are you smiling at that one?
Well, if you want to be the skeptic, the skeptic is going to say is that he was never he was never really going to come back. But I think he was making a real effort to come back. That's why I'm laughing, because it's just like a lot of like, there's that skepticism, you know what I mean? Like that exists out there over whether this was ever real and was this being done to kind of build drama and everything else.
Well, I just want hold on a second. Was it ever real? Because we need to be sure here, and I want to make sure that you're completely honest, or I mean straight up about what we were referring to here. You're saying skeptical about him ever being able to come back, not that because there's the crazy stuff out there that he never really tore his Achilles fully.
No.
Okay, just want to make sure we're all clear here.
Just to be clear, Aaron, we all believe that you tore your Achilles. We do believe that.
Well, there's a lot of people. There's some tinfoil. There's some tinfoil and there's some hats out there. Even though I saw his calf twitch on national television, and if it didn't fully tear, then what the hell happened all season long? But that is clearly not the case. So he said that he's not medically cleared to play, or he doesn't believe he will be, which means the window for him to play this year will officially close on Wednesday. He did also give a full-throated endorsement for Robert Saleh's coaching acumen and Joe Douglas's grocery shopping and the roster that's there. And he said he always wanted to play 2 years. He always envisioned playing 2 years for the Jets, and this one was just a lost season, so 2 more years might still be on the menu. What do you make of all that in terms of the way the Jets are moving forward with their coaching staff?
Yeah, well, the way that I've answered, like a lot of people have asked me, like, are the Jets coaches, is their staff safe, right? Like, and my answer has always been, as long as Aaron's coming back, they are. And I think the reason why is because A, this is a situation he picked. B, he and everybody else felt really good about it on September 12th, going into that game. Or September 11th, was the date, I think, right?
Yes, sir.
September 11th.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, September 11th. So everybody felt really good about where they were going into the game and going into the season. And I mean, if you really look at it, like the roster's pretty good, and I think we've seen evidence of that. Now, the offensive line's going to need some help in the offseason, but they should have the tools to do that. And obviously, like, the backup quarterback was an issue this year, but how many teams are able to survive having a backup quarterback?
Well, don't answer that question, because I mean, the team that they're seeing
Cincinnati,
next week
Indianapolis,
is Cleveland. Yeah. They're seeing Cleveland next week, and I'm pounding the table for Kevin Stefanski being coach of the year. But do go on, Albert. Do go on.
No, but I think, like, that sort of catastrophic injury is going to sink a lot of teams, is the bottom line. And so, I think the feeling is like Joe built a pretty good roster there. Saleh's done a good job keeping the team on board and keeping the team playing hard. And Saleh's a defensive guy, and his defense has been pretty good, over the course of the year. They've built a good defense there. So it's not like he or Jeff Ulbrich, the defensive coordinator, would be in trouble. And then you could maybe say, well, all right, like, what about the offensive coordinator? But that's Rodgers' guy, So Nathaniel Hackett's probably going to make it because he's Aaron Rodgers' guy. And so, I don't think that there's going to be any coaching staff changes. I don't think there's going to be a front office change, because I think that this is sort of what Aaron Rodgers signed up for, and this is what Jets ownership is going to give him. And, if he wants to come back and play in 25 and this doesn't look good in 24, maybe we're talking about something else. But, I do think, like a lot of people, yourself included, feel like something was taken away from them on September 11th, and they want a chance to see what it looks like full on. And, presuming everybody, that the rest of the rehab goes well and everything else, they'll get that chance in 2024.
Well, at least, Joe Douglas stood firm on not coughing up the first-round pick. Otherwise, they'd be like the Panthers.
Yep.
No first-round pick for a quarterback that, wasn't even there. I know now Bryce Young is clearly there. I'm just saying lost season with their quarterback.
You know what? That is so important. It's a great point, Rich. You know why? Because this is this is a good tackle draft. Okay. So if say the Jets wind up with the 6th or 7th or 8th pick, right? Rather than having a second rounder, that could be Joe Alt from Notre Dame. That could be Olu Fashanu from Penn State. Like that could be Amaris Mims from Georgia. Like this is seen as a really good tackle draft. Like those first two names, Alt and Fashanu, are considered like franchise level left tackles. So if like the fallout of the Rodgers injury is that you get his left tackle for next year, I mean, obviously you'd rather have had Rodgers this year, but I mean, it's not a bad consolation prize for having done the deal the way that you did.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show from Sports Illustrated. Let's dive into the final 3 weeks of this season and identify for me, if you don't mind, coaches that you believe are coaching for their jobs right now, Albert.
Well, I would say Ron Rivera, but I think that one's over.
Okay.
So I think that, it would have taken and this isn't Ron's fault, but like a new owner is always going to want his own guys in there, right? Like, so, I think that one's over. We have Washington. So we have Washington, Carolina, Chargers, and Panthers as the ones that are open right now.
You got the Raiders too. You get the
Raiders.
Raiders.
The Raiders. Yeah. Did I say one of them twice?
It's Carolina and Panthers. That's all good. Keep going.
So the first time for me making that sort of mistake.
All good, brother. Don't worry.
So if I'm kind of going through it in my head, the coaches that would be coaching for their jobs over the next few weeks, and I do this by division in my head. I think a mutual parting is possible in Pittsburgh. Not likely, but I think it's possible in Pittsburgh. That everybody says this is the time to make a change. Maybe they try to get something from Mike, but I certainly think that would be one that if you're looking for your curveball surprise, that could be it.
Wow.
Does Pete Carroll retire in Seattle? I don't think so, but I've heard a lot over the last few weeks in these circles, like the people who work in these circles and the coaching carousel circles, that would Dan Quinn be the successor in Seattle if Pete Carroll were to hang it up after this year? New England. And again, this sounds weird. Pittsburgh, New England, Seattle, that those would be where there would be changes. But New England, obviously, I think that one is it is hurtling towards some sort of mutual parting. I'm just trying to think of who would be up in the air. You know what the other ones would be? I think you have to look at the NFC South teams. Now, I think Arthur Smith makes it, but Tampa and New Orleans, whoever doesn't win that division, and it sounds funny saying that too, because if you're close to winning division, maybe you shouldn't be in jeopardy. But I think Tampa and New Orleans are two where you could see changes if those teams don't win the division. So Todd Bowles if the Bucks don't win the division, Dennis Allen if the Saints don't win the division. So I think as you start to go through it and you talk about potential mutual partings, potential retirements, you can get yourself up into that 8 to 10 range pretty quickly as far as how many openings there are going to be out there.
How about Antonio Pierce? Is he coaching for his job? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that it sounds like this is going to be they're going to cast a pretty wide net, in Vegas, and that Mark Davis doesn't want to lock himself into anything right now.
Sure.
But I would say one thing that gives Antonio Pierce a chance, right or wrong, I think Mark Davis had some regret over not at least giving Rich Bisaccia another year. If you remember that year, everything they'd went through.
Oh, God.
Really, really difficult, right? And it wasn't just the John Gruden emails. It was
Henry Ruggs.
it was the Henry Ruggs. It was Damon Arnett. It was all the stuff that was happening off the field there. And he was able to kind of unite the team and bring them together and get them in the playoffs. And, look, they went to the mat with the Bengals. The Bengals wound up in the Super Bowl. Like they were, 2-3 minutes away from beating the Bengals in Cincinnati. So, I think there was some regret on Davis's part over not at least hey, maybe we can run it back at least one more time with the group that we have. And so I think that would cause him, at least to consider Antonio Pierce as his next head coach. Not saying that it's going to happen, but if they look good over the next 3 weeks, I would say that could be on the table.
So you just blew right past Arthur Smith. What gives you that indication there? By the way, I love the guy. But when you score as many points as there are fans in the stands for your opposition, and lose to a one-win team, that can make an owner of a team quite ornery. And so, what do you got for me on that one?
I think Arthur. First of all, I think Arthur is like a really, really bright coach, and I think he's going to find success as a head coach somewhere in the NFL, whether it's Atlanta or somewhere else. And I think Arthur Blank knows that. The problem is how they've screwed up the quarterback situation. Like, let's call it what it is. Like, I think that that's a pretty good team outside of the quarterback. And I'd even go so far, Rich, as to tell you conceptually, I agree with what they've done at quarterback, which their approach internally between him, Terry Fontenot, everybody who's been there the last 3 years, their approach has been, we are better off treading water at quarterback than going all in on one we don't truly believe in, whether it's, the Deshaun Watson thing, which they tried to go in on that one, but didn't want to give him a fully guaranteed deal. Lamar Jackson, they were scared off a bit by the injury stuff and felt like if they played the way that they felt they'd have to play with Lamar, that the injury stuff would catch up with him. Like, their philosophy here has been build up the team and be patient in waiting to find the right quarterback to go all in on. And then when you find that guy like Andy Reid and John Dorsey did in 2017, then you go all in. But if you go all in on a quarterback you're lukewarm on, you wind up being the 45-win NBA team, right? Like the good, not great team that can't get over the hump. So conceptually, I agree with that. The problem is if you're that picky over 3 years and you don't have one, you end up looking like they've looked this year, which is like they can't get out of their own way at that position, even if they are talented everywhere else, as important as that position is. And so I do think, like Arthur Blank is of a mind to give Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot another year, but there will be tremendous pressure on them to get a quarterback this offseason. And the whole idea, Rich, is to not pigeonhole yourself into a single offseason to find a quarterback. Like the logic goes, like that's how EJ Manuel winds up going 16th overall. That's how Christian Ponder goes 12th overall. Like if you like manufacture like here's our franchise quarterback when there's not really there one for you, you wind up making a mistake. But that's where they're going to be this offseason, right? Like they have to find one.
You were one mention away from Jake Locker there, and so what about the idea that if the Bears go and use the first overall pick on a kid, that Justin Fields, that this would be a perfect spot for
Atlanta.
them, right?
Yeah,
like
he's
that,
from Atlanta.
That would be the perfect fix to everything you just said, Albert. What do you think?
I think it makes some sense, and I think he would be a good schematic fit for Arthur Smith. So I would just say, based on how Justin's played, do you go all in on him? You know what I mean? Like I could see the trade, and that makes some sense. Are you willing to tie your job security to Justin Fields? And I think that this would be a decent idea. Do you say, okay, we're going to trade for Justin Fields and we're going to draft one in the first round? And that'll give us a good shot, at least one or the other of making it work.
I don't know. Wouldn't you have to cough one up for Fields? I mean, wouldn't you think
I don't know if you'd have to cough a one up.
Okay,
I don't know. I'd be surprised if you had to cough a one up. I don't know. I don't know that it will be that. The other problem they have too in the first round now is, and this is an issue, are they too good? You know what I mean? Like, are they not going to be in striking distance of trading up? Like I assume whoever gets the first pick is taking Caleb Williams, and whoever gets the second pick is taking Drake May. That's the way it looks right now, at least.
Right.
If you're them, can you get into range to get a Jaden Daniels or a JJ McCarthy or whoever's going in that range? Like, can you get in that striking? Are you in striking distance to get up high enough to get one you really like? I think that's a fair question. Again, I haven't dug in enough to know how much the guys beyond Williams and May how high they're going to go. But I think it's a fair question, and they're going to be. It's going to be challenging for them to find one this offseason, because it's not like you can snap your fingers and make an Aaron Rodgers available. It doesn't work that way.
Albert, you're the man. Thanks again. Always appreciate us chatting it up.
Absolutely.
That.
Thanks, Rich.
All right,
happy holidays to everybody out there.
Same to you as well.
Albert.
Right there. It's Albert Breer, everybody. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.